Alright, what's up, guys? My name is Analyst, and today we are going over the Week 1 matchups. That means the NFL season is finally here. After all this time, after everything we've been through in 2020, we finally get some football. And it's going to open up with the Kansas City Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champions, against the Houston Texans. So before we get into that, I just want to let you guys know the computer I'm working on right now is not the best. So if you see my face, I forget which side it is. I think it's this side. But if you see my face, I'll point at that side. See my face being a little laggy or the video quality going down, I apologize. And that is something I'm working on. Hopefully by next week I can get it figured out, whether it's a new computer or whatever it needs to be. So yeah, I'm working on getting that figured out. And also, if you guys are new to the channel, if you know me from Instagram, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. And I'm going to plan on doing this, once every week. So hopefully there's a lot of content for you guys to enjoy. And this is also going to be available in a podcast form. So if you guys just like to listen instead, I can put the link to that below as well. But yeah, right before we get into this though, what I want to say is that you guys are going to hear me say two things during the course of this video. One being start your studs. So you'll see what I mean by that. You probably, it's pretty self-explanatory. Another thing you're going to hear me say is go with what you know, especially in week 1. So going with the studs, with the Kansas City versus Houston game, right? The studs are going to be from the Chiefs: Patrick Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. It's a lot of studs for one team. And then for the Texans, I identify the studs as David Johnson and Deshaun Watson. So there shouldn't be a reason to not start any of these guys unless you're in like a 4-team league and you have you can start like Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. I don't know. Some people are in some weird leagues. But point being, all those guys should be starting no matter what. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I was a little hesitant about putting as a starter because he's a rookie and he's never played an NFL game before, but at the same time he's going to be working that 3-down role, so he's definitely a decent start, good start at the very least for week 1. So going into some of these other guys, this could definitely be a shootout. We saw that in the playoffs between these two teams, and it's definitely very, very possible you just want any part of either of this team. And one of those guys I really want a part of is Will Fuller. So Will Fuller, you have to take advantage while he's healthy and on the field. If Will Fuller is playing in a game without DeAndre Hopkins, I'm starting him 10 out of 10 times. So if he's on your bench, I would suggest trying to fit him into a flex spot. But like I said, I wouldn't sit any of your studs for him. Just know he has huge game potential, right? The next guy I want to bring up, Brandon Cooks. So this is what I say. This is what I mean when I say go with what you know. Brandon Cooks, we don't know his exact role on the Texans because we haven't seen it. We know he's the starting wide receiver opposite of Fuller, but we don't know how many targets he's going to get. Maybe the targets go more towards David Johnson. Maybe they go to Randall Cobb. Maybe it's just the Will Fuller show. And at the same time, Brandon Cooks is dealing with a quad injury, and he didn't even practice on Tuesday, which would be yesterday from when I'm recording this. So I have my reservations about Brandon Cooks. It is a good matchup. Could be a high-scoring game. So if you can afford to sit him, I would. If you have two good options, he would probably be the lower of the two. But at the same time, if you don't really have too many good options, like if you have like Preston Williams in your bench or like other guys, I would still stick with Brandon Cooks. So that's where I am with that. And if you guys aren't sure what another good option might be, I'm going to be going over a lot of these teams, if not all of these teams. So you guys will get a pretty good idea. Some other names I want to bring up. Mecole Hardman. He's kind of in another situation like Brandon Cooks to where go with what you know. So we don't know what Mecole Hardman's number 2 role is going to look like on this team. We don't know how many targets he's going to get with Clyde on the field, Travis Kelce on the field, Tyreek Hill on the field. But he does have that huge game upside just like Will Fuller. So if you need a flex option and he is one of your options, throw him in your lineup and there's a good chance he could go off. But if you don't really have that many options, it's understandable to keep him on your bench. I mean, if you do have a good amount of options, it's okay to keep him on your bench and just wait and see what he does. If he's very involved, it gives you a better idea of if you can start him next week and the week after. So, as of right now, I think he definitely has flex appeal, but I wouldn't rush to throw him in your starting lineup just because he could totally flop or he could kill it. So you don't know yet. I have no interest in Sammy Watkins. I hope you guys don't either. I know he went off week 1 last year, but we don't even know like how healthy he is. I know he already had a groin injury, so and he already he's taking a backup role. I think he's taking a lesser role, so who knows how much time he's going to see on the field. So either way, I'm not interested in Watkins at all. You guys shouldn't either. And similar to Brandon Cooks, we don't know what kind of role Randall Cobb is going to have either. So if you have Randall Cobb for whatever reason, I wouldn't suggest starting him. But yeah, and I think the only other thing I have to mention about this game is the Texans tight ends. There isn't a clear number one guy. Jordan Akins seems to be the guy pulling ahead with that job. But as of right now, there is no clear number one guy, and I wouldn't consider any of these guys a start. So if I'm keeping an eye on someone, it would be Jordan Akins, but I still wouldn't be looking to start him at all. So my next notes here. The next notes I have are actually for this game, the Patriots and Dolphins game. So the Miami Dolphins are going into New England to play the Patriots. Who are the studs in this game? There really aren't any. Maybe you could count Cam Newton as a stud, but because of where he's being drafted, you might have other quarterbacks. I wouldn't really consider anyone in this matchup a stud, like a must start. So, other than that, Edelman, I think he could be a pretty decent option with him and Cam. If N'Keal Harry is going to be a big part of this offense, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen week 1 right off the bat. So I would say that Edelman now would be a good time to start him as a flex or low-end wide receiver 2 and hope he can get those PPR points. And James White is also someone I'm considering from the Patriots. They're reportedly going to ease Sony Michel back into his role because he is coming off off-season surgery. So I wouldn't want to start Sony Michel even though Damian Harris is out. There's going to be some tomfoolery. I want to say something else, but I don't know how YouTube works yet, so I'm trying to keep off the curse words. But there could be some messing around with Rex Burkhead, even J.J. Taylor, their undrafted free agent running back who's currently on the roster. So there could be a lot of mess in this backfield, but I think James White is the only guy in PPR that I would consider in a flex or running back 2 situation. Some other guys for the Patriots, like I said, it's a wait and see situation with N'Keal Harry. Go with what you know. We don't know N'Keal Harry's role yet. Keep him on the bench. Let him see what he turns into. Cam should have a strong start, like I said. None of the New England tight ends I have any interest in, so let's look at the Dolphins now. So, Ryan Fitzpatrick, on the road in New England, even though there's no fans, I just don't like that matchup. He shouldn't even be considered. You probably don't have him anyway, but point being, I wouldn't consider him a streaming option. The running backs, Jordan Howard, zero interest in. The Patriots had the best run defense in the league last year. They did lose a lot of pieces to opt-outs and other things, but this is still a pretty strong defense. And a lot of people don't realize, like, Dante Hightower opted out this year, and a lot of people say, oh, it's going to hurt their defense. Dante Hightower's out for most of last year. So he didn't really have much of most, if not the entire last year. So I don't think this defense really took as many hits as people think. They did have some guys leaving free agency. But overall, it's just not a situation where we don't know Jordan Howard's role. We don't know Matt Breida's role. I just don't feel comfortable putting him in my lineup just yet, especially because of how the Patriots were last year against the run. Wide receivers, Preston Williams, banged up, coming off ACL tear. Again, we don't know if he's going to keep that same role he did last year, so I'm not starting Preston Williams. Devontae Parker, he's also banged up. He's going to have a matchup against Stephon Gilmore, and he did pretty well last year, but I'm going to put money on Gilmore in this rematch, especially with Parker banged up. So I'm avoiding starting Devontae Parker this week. I'm avoiding Preston Williams. Someone I'm not avoiding from the Dolphins this week would actually be Mike Gesicki. So I know there's a lot of talk about Mike Gesicki being the number 2 guy on the depth chart, but listen, right? Who do you think the number 1 guy in the Baltimore Ravens depth chart is? I'll tell you, it's Nick Boyle. Nick Boyle is that team's blocking tight end. Mark Andrews comes in to catch the ball. So it's the same situation in Miami. Durham Smythe, I don't even know how many balls this guy's caught over the last 3 years. Probably less than Gesicki has gotten in every single game in the second half of last year. So Smythe is not the tight end one, the main tight end guy. He's not the receiving tight end. Mike Gesicki is going to be on the field in passing situations. The fact that Jordan Howard and their fullback was also listed as starters tells me that they want to start running the ball early. So that's it. That's really what it comes down to. The Dolphins want to establish the run game early against the Patriots. It's not a bad idea to do. So they have their blocking tight end and their fullback in their starting lineup. Simple as that. When they're throwing the ball, Mike Gesicki is going to be on the field. Do not worry. And why Mike Gesicki being on the field is so important is because he is the best matchup out of all the Dolphins players. So we can assume the Dolphins are going to be playing from behind. We also know Mike Gesicki plays in the slot more than any other tight end in the entire league. So Mike Gesicki doesn't necessarily have matchups against safeties, who they also have Patrick Chung opted out. Mike Gesicki is going to be going against those linebackers, and if you know anything about his athletic ability, that is a huge mismatch, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to hit him often and early. I think the Patriots had like 2 or 3 linebackers leaving free agency. Anyone else they have in that linebacker group is a rookie. Dante Hightower opted out. So Mike Gesicki is going to have that huge advantage catching passes over the middle of the field. And like I said, playing from behind. I think Mike Gesicki is in a really, really good spot to have a strong week 1 against the Patriots, who last year, the Patriots were great against running backs, great against wide receivers, great against quarterbacks. Their weak spot was tight end last year, and we might see them expose that again this year. So I'm not worried about Mike Gesicki being the number 2 guy on the depth chart. I'm actually happy that a lot of people are getting off of him so I can have all the glory. And if they drop him, maybe you can buy him low, stuff like that. So, I'm a big Mike Gesicki fan if you didn't already know. So, next matchup I want to go over here is the Philadelphia Eagles at the Washington Football Team. I hate saying that. I'm sorry. Why couldn't they just? I know like the millionaire or whoever like took like the rights to every single name, so they couldn't. But it's just so annoying seeing this logo look different and football team. It just looks so bad. Why not Washington team? Why football team? Like, we know you're a football. Whatever. Okay, so that's my rant for the day. I don't know if you guys heard that through the mic. So let's go over this Washington versus Philadelphia matchup. The studs include Terry McLaurin, who I am going to call a stud, right? I don't see a reason to not sit him against the Eagles. I believe he's going to be someone who gets over 140 targets this year. I am going to name him a stud. Zach Ertz, a stud. You're not sitting Zach Ertz unless you have Travis Kelce or George Kittle. I don't see a reason to sit Zach Ertz. Miles Sanders, he is a little banged up. He's coming off that lower body injury, but they've been limiting him for him to be ready for this role. So Miles Sanders, if he's healthy or if he's starting, if he's in the game, I am going to play him. Other guys to mention for the Washington football team, the Washington team, this is going to be a real problem throughout the whole season. Not considering Haskins, something to watch out for. Steven Sims, he has a pretty high projection. I think he's like 8, 9, like 10 points. I don't really know if that's going to be the case. We don't know his role. Like I said, he is going to be the starting wide receiver in the slot for the Washington football team. But at the same time, I don't trust this offense to really make anyone good enough for fantasy other than Terry McLaurin. So I'm off of Steven Sims for week 1. Antonio Gibson, I'm also off on. He seems to be more of a desperate option, if anything. J.D. McKissick is the starter. And I feel like especially early on, we're going to see a lot of, I don't want to say tomfoolery again. That sounds so bad. We're going to see a lot of a mess between J.D. McKissick, Peyton Barber. They're probably going to be very, very involved early on. And Antonio Gibson didn't really see much work in college at all. So for him to translate straight into an NFL game is going to be it's going to take a little time. So I'm off of Antonio Gibson for the week 1. If you need a desperate option, he is a big play waiting to happen, and he is a big-bodied runner. So he can get something done, but at the same time, it's just go with what you know. You don't know. I don't throw Antonio Gibson over your lineup over someone like Le'Veon Bell or someone who you already have as your stud. So I just avoid Antonio Gibson if possible, is what I'm saying. And look, when I say avoid these guys, they could still have good games, right? But I mean, if you think about what happened with David Montgomery in week 1 last year, it's just a real sign of going with what you know. You don't want to take a risk on players in situations that you don't know how it's going to unravel. So if you can afford to, I would sit Antonio Gibson. As for the Eagles, this is a really good matchup for Wentz on paper. This is not necessarily the best matchup. So we know the Eagles have had issues with their offensive line already. Jason Peters is having to move to left tackle. I think it's Brandon Brooks went out with an Achilles, and I think they had another injury too. I think it was Andre Dillard, their second-year left tackle. So they had some injuries in the offensive line already. They have some wide receiver injuries. Alshon Jeffrey, apparently he avoided the pup, but who knows if he's even going to be on the field week 1. Jalen Reagor is going to miss week 1. Jalen Reagor is looking good for week 2. But point being that he's basically just got Djax and the 2 tight ends. So he doesn't really have all the weapons at his disposal like he did last year. That offensive line took some hits. Miles Sanders is banged up. And one very underrated aspect of this Washington team's defense is their defensive line. With Chase Young and some of the other big name guys they have on that defensive line, they could wreak havoc on Wentz, and they're going to put the pressure on. So we could see that's why the Washington football team is actually one of my desperate defense streamers this week. I think Chase Young is going to get his first sack, if not 2, on Carson Wentz. So we'll see how this goes. It's good, like I said, it's a good matchup on paper for Wentz. I'm not necessarily not starting Wentz, but if you're playing DFS or something like that, I wouldn't expect him to explode. Someone who could explode, though, is Deshaun Jackson. Like I said, he is the only, go figure, he is the only healthy wide receiver on this team right now. So I'm going to play him. You know, if I have that flex spot, I'm going to throw him in there. We saw what he did week 1 with Carson Wentz. Maybe he does that again this year. So if I have Deshaun Jackson on my team, if I have him on my bench, I don't really have... If I'm trying to decide who I want for my flex, I'm leaning Deshaun Jackson. He's going against the former team, and the football team doesn't really have the best secondary at all. So I'm really leaning Djax. And like I said, I'm not... If I have like David Johnson in my flex, I'm going to start David Johnson. I'm not going to throw Deshaun Jackson in there. If I'm deciding between a couple of flex options that I'm unsure of, and Jackson is one of them, I will lean Jackson. So I'm trying to help explain this the best way I can. But let's go down to the next game I have notes on is right here. It's going to be the Jets and the Bills. So the New York Jets traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Studs in this game, Le'Veon Bell. Maybe Josh Allen. I wouldn't consider him a stud season long, but I think obviously this is a great start for Josh Allen if you have him on your team. So I'll go with Le'Veon Bell and Josh Allen. In terms of the Bills, is Singletary a good start here? I don't know, right? I mean, it's like you would assume if Zach Moss is going to have a bigger role, it's going to take him some time before he does own that role. But there's been a lot of negative about Devin Singletary this offseason. Fumbling issues and just not being able to break through the tackles. While Zach Moss is someone they really, really like, and it's been all positive news for him. So I would be a little hesitant of Devin Singletary. But at the same time, I think he's a fine flex option this week. It's a good matchup. So I'm okay with Devin Singletary this week. Zach Moss, on the other hand, like I said, he does have a chance to surprise some people in week 1, but at the same time, like that's a chance. I'm gonna let him ride the bench and see what he turns out to be and what kind of role he has on this offense. So that's where I am as far as this running backs. Diggs, I'm gonna start. I know I said go with what you know, but at the same time, it's a great matchup. The Jets don't really have a secondary at all, especially with Jamal Adams gone. And Josh Allen and him apparently have a good connection. So, yeah, just like the same way I'm going to be starting DeAndre Hopkins, I'm going to be starting Stephon Diggs. I'm not saying they're the same player, but I'm just saying, like, I feel confident enough, even not knowing the situation. John Brown, Cole Beasley, maybe John Brown, right? If you're desperate for a flex. I think if he's building off the way he ended last year with Josh Allen, maybe he could look to lean on John Brown a little bit in at least the first week. I don't know. It's nothing concrete. I wouldn't rely on John Brown, but if you have him and you need a desperate flex option, he could be okay. Cole Beasley, on the other hand, I'm not interested in. Tight ends, Dawson Knox, it's whatever. I mean, I don't think anybody's looking to start Dawson Knox this week, and if you are, you're probably not in a good situation with your team. Yeah, so not much on Knox there. As far as the Jets, Crowder in PPR playing that slot position, it's not a bad matchup for Crowder. You know, he doesn't have to go against Tre'Davious White on the outside. On the other hand, I'm not sure of the health of Denzel Mims, but if he's on the field, going against Tre'Davious White is not a good first matchup. So, avoiding Denzel Mims, avoiding Brashad Perriman for that same reason. Chris Herndon, he's apparently injured like a week or two ago. Not sure about his health status. I do love Chris Herndon season long, but the Bills have been one of the better teams against tight ends. So I would avoid Chris Herndon in this matchup. Again, we want to see what kind of role he has on this team. So, and the reason the Bills are so good against tight ends is they have two very good safeties. And a lot of times safeties are one of many options to cover the tight end. They might assign coverage on Chris Herndon. And yeah, so if you can avoid Chris Herndon, I would. If you have like two late options like Jonnu and Herndon, like that's one of the things I did, or Gesicki and Herndon, I would lean the other guy. But at the same time, if you don't really have many options, you know, Herndon's not terrible. I just think the matchup isn't great. So we're trying to fly through this. Let's go to the next matchup here. We got Vikings hosting the Packers. So studs in this game is going to be Devontae Adams, Dalvin Cook, and Aaron Jones until proven otherwise. So Aaron Jones is apparently working on extension. As of right now, he's still a stud for me. That could change at some point during the season if A.J. Dillon sees a bigger role, Jamal Williams is taking a larger role. But as of right now, Aaron Jones is a start for me. Dalvin Cook, he has to play at least one game if he's going to hold out. So I am going to play Dalvin if he is playing. Unless he says he's opting out and he's not going to play. Well, not opting out, unless he's holding out. But and so Dalvin's going to play if he's, you know, if he's with the team, he's going to play for me. Aaron Rodgers on the road in Minnesota. They beefed up that D-line. They don't really have much of a secondary, so Aaron Rodgers could be okay. It's not necessarily a lucrative matchup, but, you know, I'm okay starting him. Not like an explosive matchup. He's had some issues with Minnesota in the past. So I'm not interested in Dillon or Williams, as I mentioned. Allen Lazard is pretty intriguing. It's probably going to be a close divisional game. Like I said, he's a desperate flex option. We don't really know his role in the team. Go with what you know. Avoid Lazard if possible, which should be very possible considering you probably got him in the last 5 rounds. On the other hand, Kirk Cousins actually had 2 very good games against the Packers last year. It's just this thing of whenever Kirk plays the Packers, he does really well. So I think Kirk is actually a really good streaming option this week. Maybe if you're not too confident in your quarterback situation, you can pick up Kirk if you have that extra bench spot, throw him in your starting lineup. I think you could do very well this week. Dalvin Cook I already mentioned. Adam Thielen, I guess you can consider him a stud right now. I'm not a huge Adam Thielen fan, but he would be someone if you have in your lineup, I would start him. The tight ends, again, I want to see how that situation shakes out. Maybe Irv Smith takes that second-year jump, but we don't know yet. Justin Jefferson, B.C. Johnson, I don't know what's going on with those wide receivers, but I'm definitely avoiding starting those guys. So, All right, we got a couple more games to get to. I hope you guys are taking some value from this. And if you guys want me to do this every week, let me know. I'd be more than willing. And also, because I am recording the way I am, I have no idea how my video is doing, how my face looks right now. So if it looks awful and it's totally delayed, I so apologize. But I'm going to try to get that fixed. If it's fine, awesome. But how many fingers am I holding up if it's fine? Okay. So we got Jacksonville versus Indianapolis. Studs in this game with Leonard Fournette gone. There's not really any studs. Yeah, it's not a bad matchup for either quarterback. I might be against starting Minshew just because we want to see how he adjusts to being a starter in year 2. And that Colts defense is on the rise. So if they play really, really well, we know in the future to avoid the Colts. But if you can avoid starting Minshew week 1, I would. As far as the running backs go for the Jaguars, it's a complete mess. Chris Thompson, James Robinson, the undrafted free agent, being named the starter. Devine Ozigbo, Raquel Armstead. We just don't even know what pieces go where. The only running back I would consider starting is Chris Thompson if you are in a PPR league. Other than that, even with James Robinson being the starter, I'm not going to throw him into my lineup at all. Wide receiver is the only guy I like, DJ Shark. Not interested in Visca yet, or really anyone else. Didi, I think, was with the third team. Chris Conley, I'm not interested in. And the tight ends, Tyler Eifert, I don't know his role yet. Go with what you know. Avoiding Tyler Eifert right now. The Colts, Phillip Rivers. This is a great matchup for Phillip Rivers if you're desperate for a streamer. I think this is going to be the Colts just running all over the Jaguars. So I don't think Phillip Rivers is going to go off, but I think he could have a very efficient game. So if you're desperate for a streamer, Phillip Rivers is definitely an option. I would lean more towards like a Kirk Cousins, like I mentioned before, but definitely not against Phillip Rivers if you are desperate. Running back wise, I've gotten the most questions about, do I start Jonathan Taylor? Do I start Marlon Mack? Yeah. Just start them both. I mean, Marlon Mack, if he's going to do okay, if he's going to do well, it's going to be early on in the season. So if you drafted Mack and you have a flex spot that needs filling, he could be okay this week. He could get 10 plus points. Jonathan Taylor, he's going to be involved. He's going to be splitting carries with Mack at the very least. And if you have a flex spot or a running back 2 spot, you don't really have much of a choice. Start him. Hope he breaks off a big run. Hope he proves why they drafted him, So I'm okay with both of those guys. If I had both of them and I had to choose one, I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to go with the upside play. Nyheim Hines, if you're in a PPR and you're desperate, maybe, but this isn't a game where they're going to have to be playing from behind. So, well, at least we believe so and we think. So, I wouldn't necessarily be banking on Nyheim Hines this week. Although I do love him season long. Right? So that kind of goes with that. T.Y. Hilton, if he's healthy, just like Will Fuller, you got to take advantage of him being on the field. I think he's coming off another strain, pull, hamstring, whatever. But he's been practicing in full. He's in line to play week 1. I'm going to start him. Campbell, Pittman, don't know the roles. Jack Doyle could be an interesting option, especially with Trey Burton out. So I think Jack Doyle is someone I would consider if you're in a tight spot at tight end. All right. Let's see if we can fly through this now. I'm on a roll. Okay, so we got this game here. We got Detroit and we have Chicago. So, and also guys, if you guys are watching this here, if you guys want to know where to watch the games, how to watch the games, what time to watch the games, these are all Eastern times and these are the stations they're going to be on. So hopefully that helps as well. But studs in this game, it's going to be the wide receivers. It's going to be Kenny Golladay. It's going to be Allen Robinson. Those are 2 guys I'm not taking out of my lineup. You could not pay me to start a single Lions running back this week. No Kerryon Johnson, no DeAndre Swift, no Adrian Peterson. The Bears defense is healthy, and they got Akeem Hicks back. So I would be worried about how good that run defense actually is, because we saw 2 years ago they were the best run defense in the entire NFL, the entire NFL, but they dealt with a lot of injuries last year. So not interested in any of the Lions running backs. If they're gonna have a weak spot, it's gonna be their secondary. It's gonna be Kenny Galladay. Marvin Jones, I think, is definitely flex worthy. As far as the tight ends, T.J. Hawkinson, he said his ankle's not 100%, so he's another wait and see situation. But if you need to start him, I'm definitely okay with that. As far as the Bears, Mitch Trubisky is the starter. Woohoo! Yay! Who the fuck cares? I'm not starting Mitch Trubisky. I don't trust him. David Montgomery, if you can avoid starting him, then avoid starting him. He's coming off a groin injury. It's not a bad matchup at all. We just don't really know his health situation. I don't even think they've given a 100% definitive answer on if he's going to play week 1. Tariq Cohen makes more sense as a starter in this game in PPR only, just because I think even if David Montgomery is playing, they're going to limit his snaps and we're going to see more of Cohen on the field. And Cohen has been Trubisky's safety blanket along with Allen Robinson for quite some time. So I think Cohen is definitely flex worthy in a PPR league. This happens every time. I gotta bring water or some shit. What else? Wide receivers, Anthony Miller. He ended the year pretty well last year, but not necessarily. Again, I'm not ready to throw in my lineup. I don't know the situation, how involved he's going to be. Tight ends, it's a crapshoot. I don't want it. I don't want any part of the Chicago tight ends. Until someone comes out and takes over that role, I don't want any part in those tight ends. So let's go down here. We got the Carolina Panthers hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. So, the studs, obviously Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, and Josh Jacobs. If it's not any of those three guys, I think it's all up for debate. I think this is a good matchup for Teddy Bridgewater to make his debut. He's someone I would be looking to pick up on the waiver wire if you're in a tight spot at quarterback, if you're streaming. I think this is a good spot for Teddy B to make a strong start and strong debut. I'm not sold on Robbie. I don't know why Robbie's projections and why he's being drafted so incredibly high. I'm not sold on him. Teddy Bridgewater is not a deep ball passer. He's a short to intermediate guy, so I just don't see the value in Robbie. I also don't really see the value or the, looking for a guy like Curtis Samuel. The only two Panthers I'm starting is Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore outside of Teddy Bridgewater. Ian Thomas banged up. Is he even going to start week 1? I don't know. No part. Raiders. Josh Jacobs, obviously. I think this could be if you're desperate for a streaming option, Derek Carr could have a good game. I would like to see his receivers be more involved before I'm ready to throw him into my lineup. With that being said, the Panthers could very well have the worst defense in the NFL this year. Just because they lost so many guys and they didn't really make up for it. I think they spent the whole entire draft on just defensive players. So I am concerned for the Panthers. I guess that's a weird way to word it. But Bryan Edwards, I'm not starting him yet. I want to know his role. Henry Ruggs, I want to say I'm not starting him yet. But the intrigue and the upside in a matchup like this is just too good. I think Henry Ruggs is flex worthy, even though he hasn't played a game yet. But, like I said, if you have two good options, you can afford to sit him. But if you need to play him, it's not a bad option. Darren Waller, I think he's going to start off strong. He's going to fall off a little bit, in my own opinion, as other guys get more involved. But week 1, he's going to be the main go-to guy, so I'm definitely okay with starting Waller here. So, let's move on. We got Ravens, we got Browns. So, the studs in this game. Lamar Jackson, Nick Chubb, Mark Andrews. That's it. Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry. I would not consider them studs, especially in this matchup. This is going to be a run-heavy Stefanski offense. We don't know how many targets are going to be available and who they're going to go to. I don't trust Hooper. And Kareem Hunt, I guess, could be flex-worthy. He just got an extension, so he's going to be involved in this team. We just don't know how involved. So, If you can wait and see with Hunt and see what his new role is with Kevin Stefanski, I would. If you need to start him, I'm completely fine with that. Odell, if you don't have any other wide receivers that are on the same level as him, I'm okay with starting Odell. Hoping for that bounce back, hoping he's healthy. Jarvis Landry, on the other hand, look, I mean, Landry's going to be playing on the outside. He's not going to be playing on the slot. They're moving to 12 personnel. He's not going to have that high target volume. He does have that chemistry established with Baker Mayfield, but there's only going to be so much going around. I'm leaning towards sitting Jarvis Landry in this week 1 matchup. Although Odell could see Marlon Humphrey, Landry could be open on the other side. It's still tricky. It's just not a great matchup. I would avoid starting them if possible, especially going into Baltimore. As far as the Ravens, I think Marquise Brown could have a pretty good game. I'm definitely okay with starting Marquise Brown as a low-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, flex. Mark Ingram, I think if there's a time to start Mark Ingram, it's going to be early on before J.K. Dobbins takes on a bigger and bigger role. So Mark Ingram, I'm okay starting. I don't think it's a huge matchup for him because usually his best matchups are when they blow the other team out. J.K. Dobbins, I'm going to wait on Dobbins. I love Dobbins, but I'm going to wait on him. So that's going to be that. We are flying through this. What else we got? Atlanta and Seattle. Where are you at? Here you are. So, studs in this game. I'm expecting another high-scoring matchup. There's a lot of studs here. From the Falcons, we got Matt Ryan, Julio, we got Ridley, we got Gurley. I categorize all those guys as studs. I wouldn't see a reason to say any of those guys. I'm a huge fan of Ridley. As far as the Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, I would identify him as a stud right now because Rashad Penny is out. We don't know how involved Carlos Hyde is going to be, but I would categorize Chris Carson as a stud. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. I'm starting both those guys. So there's not a lot of guys in this matchup I'm not starting. The only question for Atlanta is their tight end Hayden Hurst. I mean, he's someone, if I have 2 decent options, I'll let him ride the bench just because we don't know his role. And especially because Jamal Adams, the reason that I mentioned the Jets before in their secondary, the Jets were one of the best teams against tight ends last year. And I mentioned how sometimes safeties go on tight end coverage. So Jamal Adams now being on the Seahawks, I have some concerns about how Hayden Hurst is going to do in his first game. This could very well be a Julio game. This could be a Calvin Ridley game, Todd Gurley game, whatever it needs to be. I don't have a lot of faith in Hayden Hurst in week 1. So if you have another good option, like I mentioned before with Chris Herndon, then I would go that route. If you're deciding between Chris Herndon and Hayden Hurst, I'm going to roll Hayden Hurst because I'm sure I'm going to get that question somewhere. But at the same time, if you can sit Hurst and you have another decent option, then okay. But if not, I understand he was drafted in the 7th, 8th round for a lot of people. You may not have another option. That's fine. I'm okay with starting Hurst. Just a little worried because we don't know his role and Jamal Adams in that secondary. And yeah, that's going to do it for that matchup. Let's go over here. We're now getting to the 49ers, the Cincinnati and Chargers game. So, the studs in this game, Austin Eckler. I would classify Keenan Allen as a stud until proven otherwise. Hunter Henry, Joe Mixon, and I would categorize Tyler Boyd as a stud, but not AJ Green. And I'll get a little bit into that. AJ Green is reportedly healthy. I'm very weary about throwing him into a lineup. There's just so many scars from last year trying to do that. He could be a decent flex option because if he is any sort of way the old AJ Green, which I don't think he is, but if he is, he could go off at any point. You know, if he goes back to his elite wide receiver form, he could definitely go off. Joe Burrow, don't want to start him in his season debut at quarterback. I don't want to start a rookie quarterback in their season debut. I'm sorry. This Chargers defense has a lot of scary pass rushers. Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram. I'm going to wait on Joe Burrow. I'm going to let that play out by itself. What else? So I think that's everybody. But for the Chargers, Tyrod Taylor, he could be a streaming option this week. The Bengals were the worst team in the NFL last year, so that's not a bad matchup if they haven't made too many improvements. So Tyrod being officially named the starter, I'm okay with streaming him if you're desperate. It could be a pretty decent matchup. Okay, we're getting towards the end here, guys. We're getting towards the end. We got Tom Brady making his Buccaneers debut against the New Orleans Saints. This is another game where I'm expecting a high scoring. This is another high scoring game that I'm expecting. So the studs here: Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Drew Brees. I'd consider in there. Mike Evans, Godwin, Brady. Again, just a lot of guys who, if they're in this game, I'm starting them. If we're talking Jared Cook, he's definitely not a bad option. The Tampa was one of the worst teams against tight ends last year. Haven't done much to improve that secondary. So I think Jared Cook, just know he's a boom or bust option. If we're talking about, let's say if you have Jared Cook or Hayden Hurst, I'm going to lead Jared Cook. If you have Jared Cook or Chris Herndon, I'm going to lead Jared Cook. So, what else we got? Latavius Murray, not considering him as a flex at all. The Buccaneers were one of the best run defenses in the NFL last year, and not much has really changed for them either in that defensive line. So I'm avoiding Latavius Murray. Don't see him as a flex appeal. Obviously, Kamara I'm still okay with because of his role in the passing game. Now it's really going to come down to the question of the Buccaneers' backfield. Can you trust Fournette? Can you start Fournette? Do you start Rojo? What do you do? So, obviously the easiest answer is just sit these guys, if possible. Arians did say that Fournette will have a role, but I still view him as a desperate option. I mean, this guy just flew in a couple days ago. He has little to no knowledge of the system. He did pick it up fairly quickly, apparently, but he's going to have limited snaps. And I'm not jumping to throw him in my lineup by any means. So, Fournette, I'm trying to sit if possible. He's nothing more than a desperate option for me. And Rojo, I'm not really considering. If you can sit these guys, sit these guys. The Saints also have a pretty strong run defense as well, so I would avoid those guys. I'm not throwing Gronk in my lineup. I'm sorry for anybody who likes Gronk. As a Patriots fan, I do have love for Gronk, but I don't, go with what you know. I don't know what Gronk's role on this team is going to be. We didn't get any preseason. We don't have any idea of how he's going to be in this offense, who he is as a player. Is he still an elite athlete? Probably not. So I'm avoiding that situation. Okay. Let's go to the 49ers and Cardinals game. Studs here. George Kittle, as usual, especially against that Arizona defense. We know how bad they were against tight ends last year. DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray, and Kenyon Drake. So I had a lot of people ask me if I'm still starting Kyler Murray. I am. The 49ers defense did fall apart a little bit at the end of last year. I think in a divisional matchup, Kyler Murray is going to be able to get it done going into his second year. Kenyon Drake, he's one of your studs. He probably drafted him in the second round, first round, whatever it was. You got to start him. DeAndre Hopkins, healthy enough to be on the field, healthy enough to be in my lineup. I think Jimmy Garoppolo makes for a decent streaming option. He's going into his second year as a full-time starter, and he's going to be 2 years removed from that ACL as well. So we could see Jimmy Garoppolo have a pretty good year. He just doesn't really have the weapons. He has George Kittle, Deebo Samuel's questionable, Brandon Ayuk is questionable, and that's it. He's just really got the running back. So I'm not expecting big things from Jimmy Garoppolo, but he has shown flashes in the past, and he is 2 years removed from the ACL. So I'm okay with Jimmy G as a streaming option. As far as the 49ers running back rotation, I'm not starting a single 49ers running back until I see it in action. We don't know if Jerick McKinnon could somehow be the main guy. And honestly, there may not even be that many takeaways from this week. Because if Jerick McKinnon goes off, it could be a completely different guy the next week. It could be Raheem Mostert. It could be Tevin Coleman. It could be Jeff Wilson Jr. So I'm not sold on starting any of the 49ers running backs this week. If you want to ride starting Raheem Mostert, that's on you. I would advise against it. I'm a huge Raheem Mostert hater, but I think this is a game where they're going to have to rely a lot on the running back. So I don't absolutely hate it if you have to start Mostert. Like if you're picking between Raheem Mostert, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, I'd probably still start Raheem Mostert out of that group, and it pains me to say that. But trying to give examples because I know you guys are gonna have questions similar to that. So I would start Mostert over those two guys. I would hesitate, like I said, starting Debo or Ayuk, especially Ayuk because he's a rookie. But Debo, even if he's healthy, am I ready to throw him in my lineup? If you can afford not to, sure. But yeah, it's a messy situation with Debo because with the Jones fracture, it's really tricky. He could re-injure himself and be off the field just like that. Who knows how healthy he is, how his rehab is gone. So I'm avoiding that wide receiver core. Christian Kirk, and Larry Fitzgerald, I kind of have minimal interest in. I'm not excited to throw Christian Kirk into my lineup, and neither am I with Larry. So kind of not even speaking English at this point. All right, so we're coming down to the final 3 games. I need some water, but I'm gonna push through this. Next time I'm bringing water because my throat is just ridiculous. So studs here. We got both the Rams wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, right? 3. What am I doing? I'm losing it. For the Cowboys, we got Dak and we got Zeke. I'm expecting another shootout. Dallas defense hasn't gotten any better. The Rams defense has gotten a lot worse. This is going to be another shootout game. Jared Goff, I think, is a go. Dak is a go. Zeke is a go. As far as the Rams running backs, Cowboys do have a pretty strong defensive line still. So I'm avoiding Cam Akers. We don't know his role. I'm not buying into Malcolm Brown being the guy. I'm not looking to throw Darrell Henderson up in a lineup. So I'm sitting all 3 of those guys. Wide receivers, I think as far as the Dallas Cowboys, I'm fine with Gallup and I'm fine with Amari Cooper being my starters. Maybe a little weary on Amari Cooper because he's going to be lined up against Jalen Ramsey. So if you have another good option, maybe I would throw them over Cooper. But I'm not like panicking and throwing Cooper on my bench. So CeeDee Lamb, I'm not ready to throw him. I've never seen him play a game yet. So that's going to be, go with what you know. I don't know how CD is going to be involved. If he ends up killing it and you have him in your team, then at least next week you can throw him in your lineup confidently. But for right now, play it safe. If you want to play with risk, I think it's a good matchup. But, yeah, and I mean, the Tyler Higbee, Blake Jarwin, I think Tyler Higbee, this is a good matchup for him. Dallas was pretty bad against tight ends last year. They're one of the worst teams. They desperately need that safety help. They don't have it. They never got it. Clinton Dix, they just released. So they really have no one in that secondary. They lost Byron Jones. So I think Tyler Higbee can be a decent option. It's just about with Gerald Everett there. We don't know his role, but at the same time, there aren't too many options at tight end. So I would put Tyler Higbee among the top of guys I'm starting for tight end. I would probably start Gesicki over Higbee, but I think Higbee would be right after that. And then I'd put Higbee over Hayden Hurst and Jared Cook and Chris Herndon. And so that would be the pecking order, if you will. Blake Jarwin, I'm not really interested in. Again, I want to wait and see. All right, New York Giants versus Pittsburgh. Studs going to be Saquon Barkley and Juju Smith-Schuster. Sorry about my voice. Like I said, water is a necessity. Ideally, I do not want to start Daniel Jones. This is just a bad matchup. I'm projecting the Steelers to be one of the best defenses in the league, and I don't want a turnover-prone Daniel Jones, no pocket awareness Daniel Jones to be my starting quarterback for fantasy. So I'm avoiding Daniel Jones. Steelers are pretty tough all around. I mean, do I feel comfortable starting? Is this an appealing matchup for a guy like Sterling Shepard or Darius Slayton or Golden Tate? No, it's really not. But if Evan Ingram is on the field and he's healthy, just like I mentioned a few guys before, I'm taking advantage of him. I'm going to put Evan Ingram. I'd probably have him as like my tight end 4 or probably my tight end 5 on the week. So I wouldn't start him over Andrews, Ertz, Kelsey, or Kittle. But I think Evan Ingram definitely is a top 5 tight end this week against the Steelers. Even though it's the Steelers, Giants are going to be playing from behind. If Evan Ingram's healthy on the field, he's going to see more targets than any other Giants wide receiver. So if I have Ingram, he's healthy, I am 100% starting him. Connor, if he's healthy on the field, he's been told he's the workhorse, 100%. I would consider him even a stud. Yeah, so I would consider Connor a stud this week as well. So Connor should not be out of your lineups if he's healthy and on the field. Juju Smith, definitely a good matchup for him. The other Steelers wide receivers, again, we don't know Deontay Johnson's involvement. Deontay Johnson hasn't really played with Ben Roethlisberger. A lot of people don't realize that. Big Ben played one game last year. I think it was 1 or 2 games maybe, but he was hurt during the second one, if he did play the second one. And then the whole rest of Deontay Johnson's rookie year, he was playing with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges. So Big Ben doesn't really have that established connection with Deontay Johnson. So I'd be a little weary about starting Deontay Johnson straight off the bat, and I'm not really interested in Eric Ebron or any of those other guys. I think that's just about everybody in that matchup. The last one here. Last one. Denver versus Tennessee. Studs. I just have a couple from the Titans. I mean, Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown. No reason not to start those guys. Von Miller just went out with a serious injury. He's going to miss the entire year. Broncos defense has taken some hits this offseason. They aren't all that great. Ryan Tannehill could be a desperate streaming option. I don't see this as a good matchup for him, especially going into Mile High. Jonnu Smith. The Broncos were pretty good against tight ends last year, so maybe a little weary on Jonnu. If I'm doing the pecking order here, I'd probably put Jonnu over Herndon, but below the other guys. So I guess I'm like making invisible rankings as far as tight ends, but that would be my order. As far as the Broncos, Drew Lock, I'm not starting Drew Lock. Don't know how he's going to be on the field. Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay. I want to see how this split turns out to be, so I'd avoid starting those guys. But if I had to pick one of the two, it'd be Gordon. And if you have Gordon, you don't have another great option, then I am starting Gordon. Wide receivers, Sutton. I think this is the best time to start Courtland Sutton. The Titans don't really have the best secondary right now, and they have a rookie, but he's going to have to learn. And if guys like Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler are going to be involved in this offense, they're going to need time to integrate into the offense. So I think now is when you can capitalize on Courtland Sutton being on the field and being the guy for Drew Lock, and if they're playing from behind as well. Noah Fant, I would probably put Fant. God, I gotta make a list of all these tight ends because I have like this list in my head, but I'm getting lost. I would put Fant under Cook, but above all the other guys. So I think Fant is definitely worth a start as well. Okay, so that's going to do it for these week 1 matchups. I know it was kind of a mouthful. Again, I have no idea what my face looks like on video right now. It could be awful, it could be delayed. Again, I apologize. I'm going to get that worked on. But expect one of these videos each week, full breakdown. If you guys aren't already subscribed, feel free to do that. If you guys are listening to podcasts, rate, review, whatever you got to do. And I'm going to see you guys next week, and we'll do a little recap of week 1 and get looking on to week 2. So thank you guys, and I'll see you later.